Okay, so let's do the next three. The next three are all negatives. So they're a little bit different, but they're not too much different. They're just working in the opposite direction. But since reference angles can't be negative, things don't really change. Not like the other ones where there was two with the that were past 360 degrees or past 2 pi, so we had to minus a coterminal. That was the secant and the cotangent here. But these ones are all relatively simple. Is there 4 here? No, there's 3. Okay, nice. So let's just try it. The reference angle is still there, so pi over 4. And sine of pi over 4, well, sine of pi over 4, you can go to your chart if you want, but it is root 2 over 2. So that's what I have there. I don't have to flip anything because it's not a cosecant. It's actually just a sine. So now I can take a look and see where I'm at. So if I'm working backwards, this is going to be negative pi, and I'm going to write that as, oh, that's a little aggressive, negative 4 pi over 4, because that's still going to be a negative pi. And over here would be a negative 2 pi, which I'm going to write as negative 8 pi over 4, because that is still going to be 2 pi. And then when you're doing this, it's pretty straightforward to go to negative 5, because you start here. Okay, here's negative 4, so negative 5 would be just past that. This would be negative 5 pi over 4. So which quadrant is that in? It's in the sine quadrant. I happen to be sine, so I can be positive. And that's that. Let's take a look at the next one, cosine. It's negative, but that doesn't make any difference for my reference angle here. It's still pi over 6. So cos of pi over 6. So you need to go up into the chart and find out what cosine is. I think it's going to be root 3 over 2, maybe. So here's pi over 6, cosine root 3 over 2. I don't have to flip it or anything because it's just a normal cosine, so the answer will just be a root 3 over 2. The question is it positive or is it negative? So this is negative pi, but it's 6's, so I'll go negative 6 pi over 6. And then you're working your way around to this way, and this would be a 12 pi over 6, but of course you're working backwards, so it's negative. So that's still a 2, and this is still a 1, which is what we wanted. Now I need to go to negative 5, so I'm starting here. There's negative 6. I'm not quite there yet, so I'm just slightly before. So that's negative 5 pi over 6. So now I can do my my CAST. I am in the tan quadrant. I do not have a tangent, therefore my answer must be negative. Okay, so one more to go. I have a reference angle here, and it is pi over 3. So tangent of pi over 3 is right here. Is pi over 3. Tangent is root 3 over 1, or just a root 3. So it's root 3 over 1, or just a root 3. So I'm going to write root 3. And then I need to do my cast rule. So working backwards, this would be a negative pi. So I'm going to write a 4 pi over 4. That's still a negative pi. And this will be a negative 8 pi over 4. Going all the way around, because that would be a negative 2 pi. Oh, it's not 4's though, it's 3's. Okay, so my mistake. This is a 3 pi over 3. That'll give me a 1. And this will be a 6 pi over 3. That'll give me the 2. Now I am negative 4 pi. So I'm working my way around. I'm past the 3 all the way to 4. So, oops. It's negative 4 pi over 3. Sometimes you might be wondering why I make this gap so much larger sometimes. And that's because I know a pi over 3 is 60 degrees. And so I know this gap should be around 60. And if it's a 6, I know it should be a lot narrower. So I tried to draw it a little bit narrower. That gap here is only 30 versus this gap. I wanted this gap to be a bigger gap of 60. So that's kind of how I know how to do that. But the graph isn't really asking, it's not asking me to graph it. It doesn't really matter. All it asks me is which quadrant I'm in. And I am in that quadrant. I'm in the sine quadrant, but I do not have sine, I have tangent, so my answer must be negative. So that's it for that. We now have to work backwards. So the next questions are just working backwards. So let's try one of those. So we need to indicate two angles. So if we have cos of theta, and again, we've already done this before, but our answer needs to be in radians. So it says, I think it says right there. Yeah, it needs to be in radians. So let's get this by itself, which is dividing by 2. So cos of theta is equal to -1/2. And so we take a look and we say, well, what is our reference angle? What for cosine? When does cos get us a half? That's what we're trying to figure out. When does cosine get us a half? So I look at my chart, and cos is on the left. Now when is cosine a half? Oh, here, at pi over 3. So pi over 3 for cosine gets me a half. So I'm at pi over 3. So if I'm graphing this, like I know if I put a cosine of pi over 3 here, I'll get a half. But I know that there's 2 times that I get a positive a half and 2 times that I get a negative. So I'm going to take a look. C-A-S-T. Now cosine is negative in a couple quadrants. It's not negative there, it's positive in the C quadrant. A means they're all positive, so it's not there. So it's positive in the sine, it's negative in the sine, and it's negative in the tan quadrant. So I've got 2 angles here, here, and here. And I know that this thing right here is pi over 3, the reference angle. The space from here to here is pi over 3. I also know this one is pi over 3. So the point is that we're trying to figure out, well, what is this angle? If I know that this gap is pi over 3. And because we're working backwards, we'll keep this in mind, but we know that we're always going to have the 3's here, because we know this is going to be 1, and this one will be 6 pi over 3. That'll be 2. So if I'm at 3, but I'm not quite there yet, I'm a pi over 3 short, then I'm at 2 pi over 3. Oops. Because I'm not quite at 3 pi over 3. And if I have this angle, well, I'm past 3 pi over 3, and I've got an additional pi over 3. So I must have been 4 pi over 3. So again, you find your reference angle, pi over 3. I found out which 2 quadrants cos is negative in. It's negative in these 2. So I just drew 2 angles with pi over 3 written down. Then I knew that I can label this as 3 pi over 3. And when I did that, I went short. I didn't quite go to 3 pi over 3. I was at 2 pi over 3. And I went past it by 1. So I got 4 pi over 3. So x equals 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3. Those 2 angles get me an answer of -1/2. I put x equals, but it's actually theta equals. So if I put theta of 2 pi over 3 in there, I should get -1/2. In fact, if you do that in your calculator, you can actually check that. So you can go cosine of 4 pi over 3. I should get -1/2, -0.5. And if I put 2 pi over 3 in here, it should be the same thing. So 2 pi over 3, -1/2. So that's how you would know that you're right. Okay, so we will do the next 2 questions in the next video. We won't do any more here.